Today we're going to go over the review for nutrition, cellular respiration, and photosynthesis. So this will review some of those organic molecules, a little bit from ecology, and a lot about cellular respiration and photosynthesis. So you first should have read the nutrition and metabolism section, and then you should have found that nutrition means that organisms are taking in nutrients or food, and it's for various activities. So number one wants to know what those activities are, and so they include things like energy or growth, synthesis of molecules, repair, and locomotion, which is when animals need to move, right? Ingestion is when animals take in food, so that's eating. Digestion is when you break down food. So when animals break down food into small parts, then they can go to your cells for energy use. Nutrients must be broken down into smaller parts so that they can be absorbed into the bloodstream and then into cells. If nutrient particles are too big, they're unable to get into cells, which is where cellular respiration happens, and then you're not able to use the energy from the food you eat. And when things are digested, starch is digested into glucose, and proteins are digested into amino acids. Next, we're going to review the needs of autotrophs, remember, which are plants, and heterotrophs, which are things like animals that get their food from eating other things. So number 2 is about autotrophic nutrition, and the first part, letter A, says organisms take inorganic materials, so that's water and carbon dioxide, right, and convert them into organic materials. So that process is photosynthesis, and the thing they make to start is sugars. And the prefix auto just means self, and troph means feeding. So plants, or autotrophs, are self-feeding organisms. They're able to collect energy from inorganic sources like carbon dioxide and water and use light from the sun to make their own food. Letter C says, what process do autotrophs use to do this? And remember, the name of this process is photosynthesis. And letter D wants examples of organisms that do this. So autotrophs include things like plants, algae, and some species of bacteria. Next, we'll review heterotrophs. So letter A says that these are organisms that must ingest or eat nutrients made by other organisms. So heterotrophs are not able to use energy from the sun to convert inorganic molecules into organic molecules. Letter B goes over the word origin. So hetero means others, and troph again means feeding. So heterotrophs are other feeders or have to get their energy from other organisms. Letter C says examples of organisms that do this, and those are animals, right? And there's many different types of animals, from single-celled organisms that are heterotrophs all the way up to people and whales. And heterotrophs can include several different classes, right? So there's carnivores, which are meat eaters, herbivores, which are plant eaters, omnivores, which eat both plants and animals, and then decomposers, which eat dead and decaying organisms. Now we're going to review photosynthesis. So first we're going to go over the formula, and you're going to write it 2 different ways. There's the chemical formula, and then you can also write it with words. So for the chemical formula, you should find that the equation is 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 water plus light energy, and capital E stands for energy, and then it yields, that's what the arrow means, 1 glucose, so that's C6H12O6, and 6 oxygen gas molecules. So then when you write it again in words, again, it's carbon dioxide plus water plus light energy yields sugar and oxygen gas. Number 5 says photosynthesis is the process in which sun's energy is trapped in chemical bonds of sugars. So it requires, so this means that we're listing the reactants, water, light energy, and carbon dioxide, and it makes or yields the products, glucose, and that is used in food as plants. The waste product of this process is oxygen gas. Letter D wants to know the benefits of photosynthesis. And so it does really important things. It provides food for all plants and animals. Basically, the entire food chain gets their food from photosynthesis. It provides oxygen gas for us to breathe, and it removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which is useful because it traps carbon dioxide when we are worried about things like global warming. And letter E says the plant adaptation that allows this to be possible is that they have chloroplasts. So if you remember, chloroplasts are that cell organelle or cell part that performs photosynthesis. In order for plants to get carbon dioxide and release oxygen, gas has to get in and out of the plants. So this gas exchange happens through the stomates, which remember are openings under a leaf which lets gas in and out. And the stomates are protected by the guard cells because they can open and close the stomate, and that prevents dehydration because water vapor can also escape through the guard cells. And then in order to transport water and sugars through the plant, they have two structures called xylem and phloem, and they're essentially pipes, and they can move water and food throughout the plant from the leaves through the trunk to the leaves, etc. And you can see in these two diagrams that there's a picture of the stomate in two different views. So you can see that there is the guard cells around the stomate on the underside of the leaf here. And you can also see that there are guard cells on the underside of the leaf here. And then you can also see the xylem and phloem in the vascular tissue here. So one of the layers is on top and the other layer is underneath, and that's where water and sugars are transported. Now we're going to review cellular respiration. So number 6 would like us to write the formula for cellular respiration. We'll use chemical formulas first. So glucose, which is C6H12O6, plus oxygen gas, yields carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Remember, the energy form that we're trapping energy in is ATP. Then we're going to go over the same thing with words, so you can just write glucose plus oxygen yields carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Number 7 says cellular respiration is the process that takes energy from sugar molecules and places it in molecules of ATP. So remember, ATP is the molecule that all of life uses for energy, and no organism can get energy from sunlight or sugar without first putting that energy into ATP. So we need to extract energy from sugar molecules and put it into ATP in order for our cells to utilize that energy. Letter B says cellular respiration requires glucose and oxygen, and the waste products are carbon dioxide and water. And then just to kind of review some things, most organisms carry out aerobic respiration. Remember, that uses oxygen in their mitochondria. And aerobic or anaerobic respiration does not require energy, but remember, it's less efficient. So it gives less ATP for each molecule of sugar. Usually anaerobic respiration only gives about 2 ATP versus aerobic, which gives us 28 to 30. When we are exercising and our muscles run out of oxygen, then we will do anaerobic respiration, but that waste product, lactic acid, builds up in our muscles and causes them to burn. When you look at cellular respiration and photosynthesis together, you'll notice that they're opposite reactions, and that photosynthesis captures energy and respiration releases energy. And so you'll notice that the energy sources, or the energy that's produced in respiration, is ATP, and then it releases carbon dioxide as a waste product, and then plants can use light energy from the sun in order to take that carbon dioxide and convert it back into sugars and release oxygen. So these two processes produce a cycle that circulates organic molecules through the ecosystem. Finally, we're going to go over some questions about photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So number 1 says, identify one type of organism that carries out process number 1, which is making carbon dioxide and water into simple compounds. So that organism could be a plant. Number 2 says, explain why process number 2 is essential to humans. So if you've noticed that process number 2 here is making complex compounds into simple compounds. That's important to humans because humans need to be able to break down large molecules, and then they are broken into smaller molecules that are used for structural purposes and also to extract energy. Number 3 says identify process number 3, and that's when we take simple compounds and convert them to carbon dioxide and water and also energy. And that process is cellular respiration. And molecule X, that energy molecule that we're creating for number 4, is energy in the form of ATP. So that molecule that we have to create to spread energy throughout all our cells is ATP. Number 5 says, which order of metabolic processes converts nutrients consumed by an organism into cell parts? And the correct order is A. So first you digest your food, and then you absorb the molecules, and then they can circulate to your cells, and then they diffuse into your cells, and then they can be used for synthesis or making new molecules. Number 6 says, which set of terms best identifies the letters in the diagram below? So first let's look at the diagram. The diagram starts with light energy and is captured in a process that's labeled letter A. Letter A stores energy in something called letter B, which is used in the process of letter C. So letter A, the process, is photosynthesis, and then it stores energy in letter B, which is organic molecules such as glucose, and those organic molecules are used in process C, which is cellular respiration. So the answer, the set of terms that best describes the diagram, is number 3. Number 7 says, an investigation was carried out and the results are shown below. Substance X resulted from a metabolic process that produces ATP in yeast, which is a single-celled fungus. Which statement best describes substance X? And so substance X is a waste product that's captured in a test tube. When that waste product is captured, since this is a respiration process, it's probably carbon dioxide released by cellular respiration. Number 8 says, in an autotrophic organism, substance B functions as a blank. So we're looking at these different nutrients, and our options are either protein or carbohydrates. The end product of carbohydrates is substance B. Since carbohydrates are typically the energy source, the answer to letter 8 or number 8 is A. Number 9 says, in a heterotrophic organism, substance A could be used directly for, and since this is proteins, proteins can be used to build or synthesize enzymes. So because enzymes are made of proteins, we can use proteins that are digested into individual amino acids to build new proteins called enzymes. Number 10 says, the green aquatic plant represented in the diagram below was exposed to light for several hours. Which gas would most likely be found in the greatest amount in the bubbles? So you have this little green plant right here, right? And so if we know this plant is doing photosynthesis because it's getting water and light, then we can assume that the bubbles are oxygen gas because that's the waste product of photosynthesis. Number 11 says, the production of energy-rich ATP molecules is the direct result of, and that is B, releasing the stored energy of organic compounds by the process of respiration.